never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance.
Happy Labor Day, Rob.
Happy Labor Day, Matt, on which
Fake Labor Day.
you can rest, but we will labor for your benefit. The podcaster's job never ends. We have no union. We have no rights. We have no respect. And so we here we are,
Sure.
speaking into our microphones, the most oppressed people in America.
We don't actually
the
even
podcaster.
recognize this Labor Day, do we?
That's right.
Rob?
This is the false Labor Day. This is Labor Day light. This is
Labor Day that is the wool to be pulled over your eyes.
That's
so you
right.
Don't see the true Labor Day, May Day.
May Day, the real Labor Day. Yes, this is the sanitized Labor Day. Happy Labor Day to everybody. Happy 100th anniversary of the Battle of Blair Mountain. You know, God bless all those who fought and died and sacrificed for your right to rest. And I hope that we can start to maybe win back some of that rights, because boy, we have lost it.
Hey, labor unions are at their highest national approval rating since 1965. So,
which is great. However, their actual membership is at the lowest it has ever been in the history of the United States. But
are you a union member?
No, of course not. I work for a startup.
All right. Well, I've got my union card. I'm very excited.
Matt is a union member though. Matt is a honored public employee now.
Mm-hmm. That's
member of a powerful and hated public sector union. The boogeyman.
We're very powerful here in our right to work state of Texas.
The teachers union, full of the most loathed. Is that true?
No, people. Well, I mean, people really like teachers.
No, people love teachers, but they hate the teachers union. You remember that? Did you watch House of Cards? The with Kevin Spacey doing a fake Southern accent. You didn't?
No, I didn't. Is this the one where he's like, he like turns to the camera?
I'm House
like,
Cards, and I like to, do crimes, and I'm going to be president
listen
someday.
Here.
Yes, that's exactly right.
You're not a chicken hawk.
That's exactly right.
Those
Anyway,
Foghorn Leghorn voice, yeah.
He's basically Foghorn Leghorn. Anyway, Kevin Spacey's 100% canceled. House of Cards is a okay show. Anyway, the first season, one of the main antagonists that Kevin Spacey, the hard-charging, corrupt, real politicking Southern congressman has to deal with is a teachers union, big shot, and he's trying to, I don't even remember what the plot is, but he has to get one over on him to get what he wants out of some sort of political arrangement. Anyway,
if we were only that powerful,
yeah,
to have a fake backroom deal.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. This is Dungeon Master of None.
I'm Dungeon Master Matt.
And I'm Dungeon Master Rob. On this Labor Day, we are going to be answering your questions. We're going to be catching up on a great deal of mail. Matt, right. Should we do...
Ton of DM advice.
Should we start doing our housekeeping at the beginning of the episode rather than at the end? Here now, 180 whatever episodes in.
Sure, let's do it. Let's roll that housekeeping pre-recorded footage. Go.
Yeah, so we have a Patreon. Patreon.com/Dungeon Master of None. Please check it out if you're interested. We also now have a Discord, a DM of None Discord, if you want to come and hang out and chat with fellow DMs, get advice, that sort of thing. We'll include links to both in the show notes. Also, if you are feeling like you want to help or contribute to the or to do something about the situation in Texas regarding reproductive health, please, if you can, make a donation to the Lilith Fund or one of these other fine organizations that we will also include links to in our show notes.
Links in the show notes. West Fund, all the great ones.
I think that's it. Patreon,
yeah, that's it.
Discord, donations.
If you join our Patreon, not only do you get a bunch of a cool extra episode from us each month and a cool Dungeon Master thing.
The summer there were 2 adventures that we finally managed to put together. We produced there's also our our previously produced Artificer subclass and our Warlord class.
Yeah. And you get a special invite to the exclusive VIP section.
That's right,
of
the
our
VIP
Discord.
section of our Discord. So if that's of interest to you, check out our Patreon. And if you want to be included here, know that we do look at all of our emails and we do read them, and we have every intention of answering all of them. And maybe someday we will get to them, but please write to us.
Just too damn popular, Rob.
With that out of the way, Matt,
Yes.
would you
What's
say
gonna happen here?
that if the world is if the world of TTRPGs is a super highway, what would you say to what's the traffic light of this particular metaphor? What is it telling you when it's flashing red, green, and yellow? What would that indicate?
Well,
do you think?
It better not be a red, green, yellow safety tool for people having a fun game, because that would be bad.
That
You wouldn't
would be
want
bad.
that.
That would be woke, and that would get you on the red list.
Oh,
Matt
no.
and I are, of course, now going to talk ever so briefly about this, in my opinion, very, very, very funny list from the RPGsite.com, don't go there, of woke companies.
The
Specifically
guide
woke
to woke companies.
TTRPG companies. This was put together by the forum poster Ocule. I don't know who that is,
Okay.
but Ocule has compiled a list of companies that are varying degrees of woke. There's a lot going on here.
So green, not woke or indifferent. Yellow, sort of woke.
or panders.
They bend the knee, okay? And then red, woke. These people despise you.
Yes. This post starts with, I was thinking on the topic of fighting back and not giving money to people that hate you. So I decided the best thing to do is make a compilation list of companies and RPGs that are woke, those that sit on the fence, and those that are not.
So just so everyone knows, what a company can do to make to tell you that they hate you is to have the for example, the standard line, gaming is for everyone, or higher sensitivity readers.
That's right. We are not going to go through this whole list, but I will give you some examples of what counts as being woke. So Catalyst Game Labs, publisher of Shadowrun and BattleTech, is yellow because Ocule is giving them the benefit of the doubt for now, but because they posted a statement on social justice last year, that puts them in the sort of woke or panders category. In the green category is RPG Pundit. And the reason they're in the green category is historical fiction and stays true to the mindset of the times. See his YouTube channel. Might create a new category here for anti-SJW.
We should point out that this is posted on a forum owned by the RPG Pundits. So. Coincidence, who knows? Further
We have also
investigation
discussed
needed.
the RPG Pundit in the past. We have also discussed what it means to be true to the mindset of the times and how fucking stupid that is. So anyway, and to be red, and of course at the very top of the red list is Wizards of the Coast, which according to this forum post harasses customers, diversity checkboxes, hires based on race, pedo judges. I don't know what that's about.
Fuck.
Bans anyone they disagree with on social issues from all sanctioned events. True dumpster fire.
Okay.
They also include Pathfinder, which is, of course, because there are like trans and non-binary and lots of like diverse art in Pathfinder or Paizo. I'm surprised this wasn't at the very, very top, but also as a part of the justification for its inclusion on the red list is no lie. First Adventure Path, another AP for Pathfinder, showed all men as incompetent, read like a Tumblr blog, and all the women were super powerful, and if you didn't bring the black lesbian disabled ranger with you, then you automatically lost. Iron Gods or something like that. These guys are just so, I don't know. I think I may have read Iron Gods. I don't remember.
I read Iron Gods.
I don't remember anything about this.
Okay, Okay, so
Anyway, so
this
is
reminds
just,
me, Rob, of like growing up in the 90s as a kid in a conservative household where like all movies and TV shows, like there'd be various publications that would like go through, like what the new episode of Seinfeld was, or like the new I don't know, Mission Impossible movie, and be like, is there too much swearing in this? Okay, there's one swear. We're gonna put this in yellow so you can shield
yeah,
your children.
this is a yellow.
From-
Yeah. I remember these. Yeah, they just like really detailed review sites telling you like what was okay to watch and what was not okay to watch. I
Well,
also remember
the funny thing is this only gets attention because it's so bad and so funny, and more people have probably read this thread making fun of it than ever like actually read it.
yeah.
The other thing that's really funny is a lot of game companies were like, we are very angry you didn't put us on the red list and put us yellow.
Right. Nobody cared about this. This sat unread by anybody for about a month before somebody picked up and started making fun of it. This doesn't matter. This will have no impact. These guys don't have a lot of purchasing power. It's also funny, speaking of those like Christian like review sites, it reminds me that like whenever something gets, this only works until like people want to play a popular thing. I remember when Harry Potter came out and all of those like all of our Christian, betters really wanted to say, hey, witchcraft is bad, but they also didn't want to alienate every single child.
They knew that Harry Potter was too powerful.
Harry Potter was more popular than church, which it still is.
Harry Potter, a new god. He
Anyway,
can wipe out all these muggles with just the flick of his wand.
They've gone after wizards and Paizo because, people, they don't care. They've got other things to buy. But it's just like a very like, boy, it is just so silly. Games Workshop is on here in red, because they drank the Kool-Aid a while ago and have attacked fans of the franchise for wrongthink.
Okay. I think maybe there was something about like, they have a lot of neo-Nazis like make Warhammer stuff, and they're like,
that's what's weird is like, again, those of us they're
very
other sides are concerned about Warhammer's coziness with fascist or fascist adjacent ideas and people, but the point here is there's no winning with these guys.
Well, the funniest thing is if you read the thread, which you shouldn't, but I did.
It's so dumb.
The funniest thing that like all these reactionary gamers are like is they're like, man, I really loved Morkborg. It was so cool. I'm so sad that the people who made Morkborg said, something woke that they consider woke. Now I can't play it. I'm so sad. Oh.
Matt is paraphrasing like an actual reply. It's just like it's just like very funny. It's like, oh no, I can't play Morkborg anymore. It's just
Yeah, it's just very funny that they're like trying to talk themselves into like, well, maybe we can still play this one, even though they said that like everyone is welcome here because man, it's really good. Oh, I mean, I don't believe any of these people actually play role-playing games. Also, that's a thing I believe about people who post on forums about role-playing games too much.
I'm sure it's more exciting for them to be mad about this than it is for them to actually play games. Can you imagine any of these people having enough friends to put together a gaming group? Anyway, so I'm sorry. That's just so funny. Anyway, don't be like this. Ignore this. It's hilarious. Nobody cares. Also, like, all these companies are like, no, wait, we are woke. No, we're not woke. Like, it's, even if this were a real thing, it's a bad list that incorrectly categorizes a bunch of companies. Anyway.
Also, enjoy playing such game. Well, you can still play Palladium, apparently.
Right, Palladium is safe.
If you're against woke, you can I guess you can play Lamentations of the Flame Princess.
You can play Call of Cthulhu.
Classic.
They love
and
Sandy Peterson.
That's pretty much it. Every other game company, you've now boxed yourself out of playing every other game company. So good for you.
Good for you.
Have fun.
Yeah, have fun.
Have fun playing these like half finished games and basically 40-year-old game companies.
Yeah, right. OSR adjacent, grindy, horrible, realistic dungeon crawls and fantasy games.
All right, let's move on to some Dungeon Master advice, Rob.
Let's do it. Let's answer some questions.
And although that's pain in my chest, I still wish you the best. Fuck you.
Here's our first letter, Rob. It's from Maxime. Bonjour de Montreal.
Bonjour, Maxime.
Hello, Rob and Matt, longtime listener, first-time writer, and proud Patreon contributor. I was wondering if I could ask your advice on how to group brainstorm for my next campaign. My group's default GM, no complaints here, and I've been gaming with them for over 20 years. We usually go for long campaigns. Longest was 7 years, a swashbucklery maritime mashup of Freeport and Savage Tides. Our current all-elf game is coming to a close, and I thought it would be fun that for our next game, instead of me just proposing what I want to run, we could do some sort of group brainstorm of all the things like themes and settings, etc. Do you have any experience with this or any advice on how to proceed? Thanks for all your great ideas and your enthusiasm. May all your rolls as PCs be crits, as one of my friends says, and keep rolling them dice. Maxime.
Maxime, this is a great question. And Matt, I'm sure that you have some suggestions for this, but I also have some suggestions for this.
You should continue to be all elf. That is
all elves all
idea.
the time.
No, the like all elf campaign, the all dwarf campaign, those are super
fun. We have talked to, so there has been, I feel like a whole flourishing of collaborative world building games and tools that have emerged in recent years, and there is no better time to do this with your group. Matt and I have talked about and even played Microscope on air, which I love and strongly recommend as a way. You can also, I have not played this, but I've read through it, The Quiet Year, which I believe the Adventure Zone just used to build their world or begin world building for their newest season.
I've played Quiet Year at a convention. It is super fun. It's like, you need a collaborative whiteboard or a big sheet of paper to draw on. That's super fun. Another fun one, if by the same maker of Microscope, is Kingdom, which is maybe a little more focused.
Yeah, I would say I would take a look at any of these games or tools, run them by your group. But I think this is a great way, especially if you're experienced role players and you've played in games together for 20 years and you all know what you like and you're interested in. This is a great way to collaboratively and also in a fun way decide what you're going to play next. You don't have to, like, as the DM, ultimately it's your decision. You don't have to take everything that's put down, but it should give you a lot to work with. I've wanted to do this with a new campaign for a while.
What if you wanted to just like talk through your sort of pre-session zero discussion without like the structure of a game, because I don't know, maybe you don't have as much time, or you don't want to like set that up. Everyone's very familiar with each other. Any sort of advice for that kind of talking through? I think I have some ideas.
I have some too. I don't know. Sometimes I get good answers from this and sometimes I don't, but I like to ask players what types of movies, books, TV shows, games they like, what they like about them, what sorts of stories they like to tell, what sorts of characters in those stories they're most interested in. You know, I want to focus on, when trying to draw out what type of game players like, I want to draw out examples from other fiction, and that's
getting specific,
right? You know, because I can talk to them about genres or whatever, but what I really want is like, okay, you like this part of The Witcher, or you like this character from Game of Thrones, or you like the, you know, one of these things about the Expanse or something like that, and that helps me sort of like narrow down what type of game people want to play.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. You could sort of ask people to bring those in advance to the session, or email them to you, or put them on a Google Doc before you even arrive. I think another approach, and it depends on your group, is I think most groups like are fairly down to play most things, right? And are often waiting for just the dungeon master to be like, well, this is like what I want to do, right? And so the other option is just for you to make the first move, like, you know, you to put together maybe 2 or 3 pitches that can be modified and be like, all right, here are my 3 ideas for our next big campaign. Which of these is most interesting and why? Do we want to play one? Do we want to come up with something else? If we pick one, how do we want to modify the themes and ideas that I have here?
Yeah.
So only do that one if you already have, like me, like you always have like 3 ideas at once.
Yeah. I also, by the same token, or a similar, if you want, or if your players are interested, you could also run a series of short adventures or one-shots and just see what clicks, you know, if you want to do sort of a contest structure. That depends on your enthusiasm and your players' enthusiasm and your level of time and commitment. But if you're trying to figure out what it is that you want to do and you're not sure, this can be a good way to sort of feel out. You know, we've talked about how to like talk about this, but maybe the best way to determine this is just by doing, right? Just play until you find something that like really like your group really like syncs with, and then do that.
Yeah, there's no right answer here because there's so many different ways to play and so many different ways to get started playing. But I mean, any of these approaches, another type of world building game, you coming in with your 3 favorite ideas and nailing down some specifics, everyone bringing examples, all of these can work.
Yeah, this is a great question, Maxime. So I hope that you find something fun and interesting to play, and I wish you luck.
Au revoir.
Our next one comes from Jason, and this is from a while ago. Apologies, Jason, but I like this letter and I want to answer it. So Jason writes, "Hi, Matt and Rob. I love your podcast. It keeps me entertained while I slog through the drudgery of exercise. I tried to phrase these questions as sincerely as possible, but I'm worried they might come off as a bit trollish. They're not. Well, thank you for letting me know. I'll be the judge of that. Do you guys think that there's a couple of different questions here? So we'll do one and then the other. So the first question is, do you guys think that there's a level of discrimination toward the undead in D&D? I see sentences like, clerics of Pelor despise the undead as they are not a part of the natural order, but apparently skeletons can arise spontaneously. That seems natural to me. Replace undead with bacteria and you'd sound ridiculous. Also a bit similar to some real-world attitudes towards some groups of people. Is it because of the negative energy plane associations? That also seems like a necessity to balance out the universe, so that can't be it. Is it because all undead are condemned to be evil? What about free will then? Are no undead truly free-willed, and what does that imply for other creatures of the multiverse? Do only creatures with free will get considerations before murder hobos hack them down? And if so, how can anyone tell who has it and who doesn't? The undead are always presented as monstrous, but DMs present all sorts of things as challenges to be fought that aren't inherently monstrous. Is that perception of undead the fault of DMs?
Okay.
Jason,
right.
I want to be honest.
Yeah.
This is a tremendous question that I had never considered before in my entire life. And Matt and I we're gonna work through this right now because I have not thought about it until today.
So, at least in some of the world building I've done before, right? Why is it? Do clerics have this ability to destroy or turn undead, and are either bolstering them or not? I always thought it was because clerics are connected to the gods are connected to the afterlife. Undead are usually sort of out of that cycle of the afterlife. So, that to me always seemed like an in-world explanation for clerics being like, I'm going to blast that skeleton with radiant energy.
Yeah, I have always liked skeletons or zombies or draugr or mindless undead as enemies because it feels good and safe and even possibly wholesome to destroy them, to kill them. And I had
they're the robots that your hero can
and that's the thing
without...
is like players want, for better or for worse, things to fight that they can feel good about defeating. And you can create enemies that are worthy of being killed or maimed or destroyed, but I have, as we have just talked about at great length, I don't like making a whole sentient race into that, right? It's not great when it's goblins or orcs, though those can be perfectly fine enemies. But there's something to me, and maybe this is America brain or something, but I just, it's something very satisfying about killing zombies or skeletons or destroying zombies or skeletons. They are, raised, unnatural, animated corpses, right?
Right.
But
yeah, it's that kind of like kids cartoon, like that Samurai Jack, just freaking cutting people in half. And
right.
Okay, if he ever does that, that thing's a robot or a skeleton.
That's right.
Don't worry, kids.
It's safe. It's safe to do violence to it.
That wasn't blood. That was robot oil.
But you make a good point here, and I don't think that there's anything inherently problematic about this, but it is worth thinking about, because in a magical world, if zombies and skeletons arise spontaneously or can be a part of the, not the natural order, but the magical order, then
yes.
Are they different from mosquitoes or bacteria or viruses, things that exist in the real world that we that are harmful or dangerous to us, but aren't worthy necessarily of hatred or pure obliteration?
It makes me think there would be a cool like undead druid who's like, actually, we need these.
That's right. I think there could be a room for somebody like a druid who sees undead as a natural part of the magical order. I think that, to get a little to step outside of my my lane a bit, I think that as human beings we have a innate reaction to corpses, right? This is how we respond to death. We see a body and it makes us uncomfortable. It makes us alarmed, stressed, right? This is a inherent psychological response. And so the animated corpse is a classic psychological foe. The animated dead is something that has always caused fear and terror and disgust in human beings. Whether or not that is just or correct is very interesting, and some other time maybe we can go into the origins of the zombie and how that was appropriated and massively twisted by the American movie complex from the original concept. But I don't have a good answer. I don't have a big wrap up here, because this is a great question.
No,
I
have two things to go for future reference. If you're interested in this, I think Eberron does two interesting things with Undead. So 2 sections of Eberron Sourcebook X, whichever one you have that you want to go to. One for the elves of Arane or something, Arenal, who have a ton of good undead that they use to preserve the greatest minds and most powerful people.
Positive energy undead,
and
yeah.
they use positive energy. And another is Karnath. Karnath, sorry, who animates skeletons and zombies to serve as menial labor and as frontline like garrison soldiers. And these are, some people are like, ooh, we don't like this, but the people from those cultures are like, oh, this is fine.
This is
normal.
fine, right? Actually, that's a great point. Eberron does a really good job with this. Jason, you also mentioned something which is good and correct, which I do think that we all should, just if we're interested, be more thoughtful of. But a sentient undead, a vampire, a lich, or why am I not coming up with any other examples? Anyway,
Death Knight.
We're supposed to treat them as inherently evil. But if a creature has free will, right, if it has sentience, that does raise some questions about whether or not it is inherently okay to obliterate it just because it is evil, right? We've had this. I mean, we have this has been the whole like vampires are inherently evil is something that we have been questioning for 60 years, ever since I Am Legend, or longer than that probably. But there's nothing inherently evil about a vampire, right? We've had plenty of sympathetic vampires, right? So having players show up and they're like, it's a vampire, it's evil, let's immediately stake and destroy it. That may be a more complicated encounter than it seems. And I actually think it would be good to encourage players to think about, is this intelligent undead worth indiscriminately destroying?
Yeah, or you could go the route of just being alive for 1,000 years will turn anyone to evil.
See, I like that.
Depraved acts they must do. Or you could go the route of the spirit of negative energy that animates undead is just inherently opposed
a
to
vampire
the
is
forces of
also
life in the universe.
A predator who wants to
corrupting,
who wants to eat you. They want to drink your blood. They want to feed on you. So like a hungry lion is not evil, but your players would not be wrong to kill it if it was trying to kill them. So that can be a perfectly good reason to fight a vampire. But killing a non-aggressive or whatever vampire, doesn't necessarily, that's not necessarily just because the creature is called, or has the chaotic evil alignment or lawful evil alignment in the stat book.
Right. It's up to you to decide, like, is, for example, becoming a lich like an inherently evil act? Does it like require the harm to others to become a lich? And I think it's kind of open to interpretation what the ritual is. I think that it
used to imply that you had to sacrifice other people to become a lich.
You had to cause harm.
It's not really
maybe that
written
act
out.
Stains your supernatural soul and makes you evil forever, or maybe it doesn't. These are fun questions.
Maybe a lich could come to regret that over time. I think that would be very interesting. A lich that is trying to redeem its soul. Anyway, so Eberron, Matt, that's a great point. Eberron does a good job of complicating the undead thing, and I think that if you wanted to complicate the undead are inherently evil, that would be interesting. That would be, I think, a very cool part of a campaign. This ties into Jason's second question, which I think is a little bit easier to answer.
Okay.
Which is, secondly, given the propensity for fascists and the far right in general to co-opt words that start off neutral and warp them into coded language for their vocabulary, how long do you think that words that we've used to call race, like ancestry and bloodline, are going to become unacceptable to use? Is there a way that TTRPGs can future-proof themselves against this, or do you think it's going to have to be tackled organically as it comes up? This is an interesting question, also one that I had not considered. I do think there's just an inherent tension in trying to create distinct cultural or biological or physical, types of characters. That as long as we have elves and dwarves and humans and orcs, that there's going to be some unpleasant potential racial connotations that we just have to be on the lookout for. I do think the recent moves away from race are good and will help. But yes, the answer
Will it be
is
enough. I definitely can't. I can't.
Yeah,
say.
it's a good question.
I think it's for also for like other people in the TTRPG community to critique and think about deeply, and then come to some logical conclusions.
I mean, as a DM, I find that players really like the bundle of traits that a elf or dwarf or gnome or whatever represents, and that it's, we can be careful about the connotations, but they still just like that. So in a perfect world, I would unbundle all of those things and everyone would just be a whatever, and they would pick and choose. But we're trying to walk a fine line here, and this is again one of the limitations of Dungeons & Dragons specifically as a setting that other settings do not, or setting and system that others do not share. So if this is a concern for you, and it very well may be, there are better games to play, and as we have said many times, it is totally okay to play those games instead.
There are other supplements, right? The recent guide to ancestry and culture that's on the DM's Guild that I think is up for an INI award. It was very good, right? And gets away from most of those things, though, of course, right? It does use those terms like ancestry.
Jason has one postscript. I've always wanted to work emergent intelligence into a campaign in the form of skeletons, like villagers hire the PCs to go kill a non-evil necromancer because he keeps raising their corpses as skeletons. When the PCs get to his lair, they're rebuffed by skeletons, informing them that the lair is off limits until their labor dispute with the necromancer is solved, and that they're currently striking. The dead mercenaries are actually Pinkerton-style strike busters hired by the necromancer who the skeletons killed in self-defense. I love this. This is a great idea.
This is a great little twist for your players to encounter at a dungeon, and I think they'll love it. Right?
I think this would be
if the robots wanted their Labor Day too? Exactly.
I think that would be terrific. Jason, thank you so much for the very interesting and thought-provoking question. I hope that it was helpful. Thank you again. This was this really got my wheels a turn.
Okay, here's our next letter from Sophie. Hi, I recently started listening to you guys at work to help pass the time and to learn more about DMing. I play over Roll20 while talking to my friends in Discord, and my issue is I have all these ideas for great stories, but can never seem to finish them. However, listening to your wonderful advice has fired me up to get back into DMing. Do you guys have any advice on how to retrofit a campaign I attempted, or any attempts on taking bits and pieces and putting them into my new work? On an unrelated note, I listened to your world-building episode with gods, and I'm curious what you think of the Elder Scrolls take on gods. Aedra follow the rules and cannot interfere with mortals directly, but Daedra do not follow the rules and mess around with mortals as much as they wish. Not to mention mortals using the heart of a god to achieve divinity, or the fact that mortals can literally ascend to godhood. Thanks, Sophie.
We got two questions here, and both of them are good. The first one on retrofitting a campaign. This is something I've done a lot of times because I do this in fits and starts, or I get better ideas, or I want to take the core idea of a campaign and make it better or adapt it to a new system. Matt, I don't know if you have specific advice on this, but unfortunately, for me, this is usually about the same as like starting from scratch. Usually I have my like my notes. Here are all the things that I want to save that I liked from my old campaign, and then I start working on my new setting, whether that's an outline or a campaign Bible or whatever, and then I just start working on that, and then I pull the pieces in wherever they fit, and sometimes I use them all and sometimes I don't. There may be a way to do this which isn't so much work, but traditionally for me, this is, it's helpful to have something to work from, but it still ends up being kind of a big task.
I would say you can steal almost everything from your old campaigns, right? Cool ideas for encounters redone if there's no one from the last campaign playing in this one, right? Or reskinned, world building ideas, all that stuff. You can steal basically everything but the actual like story and where it ends up going, because you can't count on people, and you should never try and force them to like recreate or get back to that same spot in the cool story that your earlier campaign had, so you can finally finish it. But you can like reuse like almost everything, and I certainly do, right? If I have to run for some people, I'm like, I'm going to use this thing that I've already used before.
Yeah. If you have items or settings or whatever, you can just borrow them wholesale. And you should. There's no, I mean, that's the benefit of a persistent campaign setting, is that you don't really have to discard old things. You just need to find a way to make them fit in the world as it evolves. And if you're not,
you can't expect to be like, all right, I want to have this story.
Right. Sorry.
Again, that
to be
may
clear,
not work. That might be frustrating for you and your players.
I always, again with homebrew, start with a completely new villain, plot hook, story, outline, but things like setting, some NPCs, items, whatever, world building ephemera, you absolutely should take and build on. I think
it's all the stuff that takes the most work you should reuse.
Yes. And this is why I think, this is why Eberron and Forgotten Realms and Greyhawk campaign settings like this have become so rich, because all of the people who were involved in their creators had essentially a lifetime or close to build on and expand and refine. And so if you've got a setting that you like, and you want to retrofit it, then you should. I think that makes it, I mean, this is essentially the like writing, editing process, except for role-playing games, and kind of, it's like a live fire exercise. So it's complicated, but this is how the game gets better, or this is how your setting gets better, is by testing it, refining it, retrofitting it, updating it, removing the things that work, add some things to adapt to new players, putting it into practice with a new campaign, and
now, I know you're dying to tell me about Adrea and
Adra and Daedra. Well, yes, okay. and no. I think this is a great point, and I'm glad that you asked it, Sophie. I think I'm going to have to do a episode on the Elder Scrolls where I yell at Matt about Sheogorath and the all of these various things. But I like it.
Are the two gods good and evil, or is it more complicated?
It's much more complicated than that. And so this is my answer to this, Sophie, is I love the Elder Scrolls take on gods. It's very much just like a pantheon of gods, like the Greek pantheon, or even like a lot of like RPG pantheons. But what the Elder Scrolls does well is that it has given the Adra and the Daedra very distinct personalities and motivations. And one of the cool things about the way that this takes place in the game, or the games, is that the way they interact with you can very clearly see what they want from you, or what they're trying to accomplish. Like, here's this mace, go do violence with it. Like, here's this magical artifact that is going to somehow further my campaign in the world. And they're limited in like what they can do, but their influence is like very like directly felt through the form of again, mostly like items or locations left behind or cults. And I think there's nothing what's cool about the Elder Scrolls, I think, is that it's a pretty like surface level generic fantasy setting, but everything has been given kind of an interesting twist. And I think the Aedra and the Daedra are a great example with this. And also, well, I think so.
I don't know anything about Elder Scrolls, but this twist seems like so easy to steal for a role-playing game setting at your table, just because it immediately gives players who are aligned with or clerics of or paladins of the Aedra, the one that doesn't interfere, like a reason for doing things.
Yes.
Right?
And this I think is, I think that it just, what was I going to say? The twist, or I guess like the distinct part, makes it very easy for you as a DM and for your players to have the gods be involved without it feeling so heavy-handed. This is one of the strengths of the game.
That's the problem of the gods being involved. Like,
yeah,
what if you get into it where it's too much, right?
Exactly.
The players feel like they can't have any control.
Right. And I think that, again, because these are video games where you are supposed to feel like more or less the center of the story, the result is a pantheon of gods that is clearly involved in the world, but subtly so. And I think this is a great idea to borrow. And the great thing is, because there's nothing like hugely unique about the gods or the Aedra or the Daedra, but the idea of how they interact is very, is something you can just sort of like Matt said, just steal and use for any fantasy pantheon. So great question. We will do more on the Elder Scrolls later, because there's a lot I think that you can borrow from that setting to enrich your fantasy setting. But that is a great question.
No, I'm excited to learn more about the Elder Scrolls, because other than like getting high once and watching someone play Morrowind in college, I have never touched a single Elder Scroll thing.
Which is a great introduction that we'll have to come back to that. Okay. Thank you, Sophie, for writing great questions.
I Googled Aedra and Daedra. Yes, thank you, Sophie. And the first question on Google is, can Daedra fall in love? People are getting horny on Elder Scrolls.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, you know it. All right. Thank you, Sophie.
Excellent.
All right. This next email comes from Holloway. Holloway writes, first, I want to say thank you so much for your awesome podcast. I discovered you guys around spring break and have been listening ever since. Keep up the great work. But there's something I'm kind of worried about regarding an upcoming game. I'm in a Discord full of online friends, and a few of us decided to run a campaign. The Pathfinder player...
Congrats on the campaign.
Congrats on the campaign. Pathfinder player, whom we will dub Nick, is an experienced DM. I already see the problem. But is already running 2 campaigns, so his hands are already pretty full. I opted to be DM since I have the second most experience with a staggering 3 sessions. Hey, that's more than nothing.
You're in the 3rd standard deviation above the mean of the human population as far as DMing experience. So you're the Yao Ming of DMing. Right?
You very much are. I opted to be DM because I have the second most experience and said we were going to run D&D 5e since that's what I'm most comfortable with. Everyone seems fine with it, including Nick, but he keeps bagging on the system and implying Pathfinder is better. I explained to another Pathfinder player that D&D is easier, and Nick chimed in and complained that there's less customization. I replied that there's still plenty of subclasses and magic items to choose from, to which he responded, quote, magic items in D&D are a joke, and that Pathfinder has way more subclasses. I wasn't trying to make it a contest, just pointing out it's not extremely restraining. I'll admit it got on my nerves a little.
Get on my nerves too. Yeah.
It's also on my nerves. At another point, I said we were going to run on D&D Beyond because it's good for the newer players and it's generally pretty useful. And he said he hates the concept of Beyond because of some sort of OGL thing he mentioned. More on that later. I'll come back to that.
Sure, yeah.
I also said I'd have to adjust encounters for the campaign, which is Dragon of Icespire Peak, because we have a couple more players than recommended, and he once again chimed in and said that scaling encounters in Pathfinder is really easy despite the conversation not having to do with that at all. In short, it seems like he just doesn't like D&D since he found a lot of ways to shoehorn his distaste for it in during a conversation about the system, but on the other hand, he did say he wanted to be a part of the game. I'm worried that he's not going to have a good time because he's already bagging on the system before we've even done anything. On top of that, I'm very inexperienced, and I'm worried I might not be able to provide a good experience for them, but that's a whole other issue. Nick's not a bad or generally negative person, but he does tend to have strong opinions and is rather blunt at times. What do I do? Thanks, Holloway.
All right. We have all had a Nick.
Yeah,
or
we
been a
all
Nick
know
in our,
Nick or been Nick at one point in time.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, okay, this is a great question because, no one's like super evil here, right?
Right. There's
no one you need to cut
bad
out
guy
of your life
in this story. Yeah.
Yeah. You just need to work out some of the rough edges, hopefully.
Yeah. So I'm sighing,
I mean,
because like I know exactly what's happening here, and I
like,
just
Nick's not wrong in that there's more options, but it's clear that Nick is expressing this in an unhelpful way.
Yeah, so I don't want to get into
a game is not better or worse because it has more options, right? You can have just as good of a campaign where your dungeon master hands you there are 3 classes: wizard, fighter, and thief.
Yeah,
that's what we're doing, right? So how do we solve this?
Well, yeah. So first
here,
exactly like Matt says, we're not gonna get into system discussion, and I think that because it's not really the point, and also I don't think it's helpful. Everything that like Matt said, everything that Nick said is correct, but it doesn't matter. Like you have chosen 5th edition, right? Because
he doesn't have to scale the encounters, right?
Right.
He's not doing the work.
You have chosen 5th edition, and I think this is a perfectly valid choice because it's easier for new players. By the way, this is why I run 5th edition, even though I actually kind of like Pathfinder a lot. I frankly don't have time to teach it or explain it to new players. They're not particularly interested in learning it, so that's my sort of favorite system doesn't really come into the. Or it does, but it's like on the priority list of like what we're going to play, not very high. Like my main goal as a DM is to have a game, have it actually happen, right? Have everybody have a good time and not be confused. And so I often choose 5th edition because whether or not I think it's the best system, that's the best way to get to my desired end result, which is a game that actually happens, that everybody enjoys. So you can approach Nick with this point and say, you might be right about customization, whatever. I think we should play 5th edition on D&D Beyond because I think it's going to be easier for all of the other players.
Or you can just say, we are playing 5th edition on D&D Beyond. And okay, reading between the lines here, my 2 guesses are, 1, Nick, as a longtime Pathfinder DM, would really like to play a Pathfinder character that has lots of customization. And also, it seems like this conversation is happening in like the group Discord or chat, and maybe not in person. Just because of the way Holloway, you describe things as replied or something, which makes the conversation more difficult in my opinion. So those are 2 things I noticed.
I think you might be right. So Matt, like Matt says, you can also just say, this is what we're doing. Please don't bring up other games. I hope you'll still have fun. Or you can try to reason with Nick, like I mentioned. Say, I agree with you, or I think you might have a point, but we're going to play 5th edition for the following reasons. I don't think that Nick is in danger of not having fun. I think that if Nick didn't think this was fun, Nick would not have said, I'm going to play in this game. I think Nick might not be doing a very good job of respecting you as a DM, but your concern, it's very, honestly, Holloway, it's very thoughtful of you to be concerned about Nick's level of enjoyment. I'm more concerned that Nick is going to ruin your enjoyment and also the enjoyment of everybody at the table besides him if he doesn't get his wisecracks under control. So I would be less concerned about adjusting the game to accommodate Nick, and more concerned about making sure that Nick understands that this is what's happening, and even if he'd rather play Pathfinder, he needs to get on board with the 5th edition train.
Right. I think, yes, if Nick had Nick's way, right, these wisecracks would have magically changed your mind and convinced you to do 40 hours of extra work to convert everything to Pathfinder and learn how to dungeon master that, which you're not going to do. So I guess my advice would, if you have to have these conversations either as a group or with Nick, is to have them like while everyone's in person at the table, or sorry, these are online friends, on the call or something like that. So, you know, maybe just as part of the first session or session 0 kind of slip in, all right, this is a 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons game. I'm playing this because this is what I really want to run. You know, who knows? 10 years in the future, I might run a different system, but tonight and for the next, you know, year, we're running D&D 5th edition. We're not going to change to any other system. So you could say that, you know, as a group, or you could have that as like a little one-on-one conversation with Nick.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be my advice as well. Hopefully, once Nick starts playing, he'll get on board. I have the same problems with 5th edition. Yeah. I miss the customization of Pathfinder. I don't love the way the magic items work. But
right, you don't have to have the argument. I think maybe one thing to avoid is being like, you don't have to be like, well, okay, there's still plenty of customization in 5th edition, right? You're absolutely correct, right? But that's not the point, right? The point isn't to play the system that has the most customization. It's to play the system that you know how to run and are willing to run.
Right.
And
yeah.
So you don't have to convince them that it has enough customization, because you're right.
Not the point.
It does have enough customization. But you don't have to win this argument.
No. So
same with the magic items or the scaling or whatever.
Yeah. It's just not the point. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, I think the other thing is maybe once you've got a session under the belt of everyone, like everyone should be fine. I mean, these sort of arguments always come up in this like the long waiting period while people are talking about starting a new campaign, and then they actually start it. And then once it gets all underway, at least in my experience, for most people, they all just kind of disappear.
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe they're not that important in the first place.
Yeah, it's just yeah, just try to make, I would say your probably your priority needs to be just making session 1 or even session 0 happen, and then hopefully Nick will stop caring.
Yeah, make session 0 happen. Get really excited about the like making characters that are connected to each other, focus on the non-mechanical aspects of the game, but also, you know, state very clearly, like, we're playing 5th edition D&D. We're doing it on D&D Beyond because that's easiest for me. If anyone needs any help with that, I'd be happy to talk to you one-on-one, but this is the campaign we're running. Let's all get on board.
Yeah. It's just that simple. Thank you, Holloway, for writing. Good luck. And I guess if you want to, let us know how it goes.
Yeah. Good luck handling this, you know, slightly problem player. All right, here's our last letter, Rob, for the day.
I'm ready.
This one's from Georgina. Hi there. Thanks for responding to my previous question. Really appreciate it. I have a whole new dilemma as I seem to have backed myself into something of a corner. I'm doing a duet campaign / series of connected one-shots. So missing some of the connective tissue, but same character and basic premise with my partner who is playing one character plus a wolf sidekick, inexplicably called Elmo. We decided to do a sort of reverse grave robber / anti-Indiana Jones premise. So in the first session, he had an epiphany from a semi-divine being that his role in helping adventurers plunder ancient tombs is actually bad, then fought the adventuring party he'd been helping and returned the magical crown they had just stolen. Anyway, my problem is that he now really can't do the whole thing of explore a generic and ancient dungeon and steal some cool stuff. His motivation is trying to sort of rectify this issue, but I can't just run him through repeatedly mugging adventurers. My next session is to have him commissioned to rob a museum and return items to the culture they were stolen from. Fuck the British Museum. But beyond that, I have no ideas. I think we've given the character a good motivation, but it feels limiting in terms of what I can throw at him now since it's duet play. The whole point is to have the story orbit around him and his motivations pretty closely. Any suggestions for where to go with this idea would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, Georgina.
This is a very interesting question, Georgina. I don't have a lot of experience with duet campaigns, but I have some ideas.
You do have a lot of experience with D&D campaigns that are not the sort of default go to a tomb and rob thing.
Yes. So Matt, I know that you have some ideas on this.
I have some ideas.
And I've got some. I don't know that there's any, problem here. Though I understand that Georgina wants to make sure that it's, interesting and motivating. But I don't see any, major crisis or dilemma. But, there's some things that we can talk about that will make this a bit more... Make sure that it runs smoothly.
Yes. The thing that stood out to me, I think is useful advice for everyone, is what went up like a flare for me in this letter was series of connected one-shots, right?
Uh-huh.
And whenever you want to do an episodic or series of connected one-shots campaign, at least for me as a dungeon master, it helps to think about, what's your core or default adventure session loop, gameplay loop, to use a computer RPG term, right?
Mm-hmm.
So give yourself a little template to design a session, right? And this is I'm just stealing this from many of the great episodic role-playing games, right? But what's the specific one for your game, right? It's something about returning artifacts to where they need to go. So just sort of give yourself a list of questions like what has been stolen or what is missing, right? And then answer a follow-up question. Why is it important? Okay. Then answer who has it right now, right? An adventurer's authority figure. Is it lost? What is it being used for right now? Who is protecting it? And where is it specifically? And who might need this museum item or treasure back? Who might need this magical artifact back?
Yeah, and I love the idea of a reverse Indiana Jones. And Matt has mentioned your default loop might be, a series of heists. Your adventurer or your anti-adventurer, your inverse adventurer is simply stealing artifacts and taking them back to a museum, or not to a museum, back to the place where they belong. Returning them to the people that it was stolen from. But there are also a lot of other great models for this. You might have your player do this is a great opportunity for a Western style thing. The player wanders into town and some either group or opposing party is trying to steal something of value, and they have to defend it, either Shane or Seven Samurai style, or
right. Maybe you should keep things from being stolen in the first place.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the heist is great. Like I can imagine you could turn this into sort of like a Shadowrun style game where you are constantly
get yourself a Monsieur Johnson.
A Johnson who wants to return magical artifacts to where they came from, and you just every session you are going after some rich asshole's house or stealing from a museum or a university lab. Or you could be trying to protect things in the first place. Guarding villages, secret artifact or something like that.
If I think this is, I don't know if you're this type of dungeon master, but if I have the set of questions that I need answered and I spend an hour answering them and then play to find out what happens with my group, that's like enough prep for me for an episodic thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
For example, with this core gameplay loop, right, I would say what has been stolen, it's a magical model boat. It functions as a feather token, right, but it also navigates. It was important to seafaring people's leaders, right? They usually important people in the community have these boats with them. Who has it right now? The Geonominators Illustrious Guild, a bunch of wizards that create maps in the city, and they've been keeping some of these boats in their headquarters. They also have a bunch of teleportation circles there. They're responsible for, connecting the geography of the fantasy empire. Mm-hmm. What's it being used for right now? It's map decoration, right? On a big map in their foyer, right? Where they have real objects from cultures from around the world. Who's protecting it? Maybe some only low-level guards, but it's also enchanted with a magical protection that activates if it leaves through the front door. And then some more dangerous, we sort of up our thing, right? You always want in your default campaign or session loop, what's the upping of the stakes? Well, if the players don't disable the magical protections, a bunch of summoned Mordenkainen's faithful retrievers show up and chase them, unless they come up with some clever way to ditch them. And then where is it right now? It's just in the interest of this big guild. Player can scope it out, and maybe who needs it back? There's a bunch of seafaring people who work in the docks of the city who would love to have it back.
Yeah.
And that right there is enough for me to run a session, right? I may need to spend another 20 minutes coming up with a list of names and other complications, but that's enough.
But I mean, that's, what is it? Where is it? Who has it? Who's protecting it? And who wants it back? Like, just do just a quick brainstorming exercise, come up with a bunch of ideas, and then whichever those you're the happiest with work into a session. You also mentioned that you can't run him repeatedly mugging adventurers, but I don't know why not. That sounds like fun to me. Yeah. You come up with a whole bunch of different adventuring parties and whatever shit they've stolen, and then either they have the player has to either convince them to give up their magical artifact or beat them and take it from them. That I mean, maybe not every time, but again, we've already come up with 3 basic structures for.
Right. I would have to kill about 10 adventuring parties before I got bored of it.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a lot of fun to me.
Yeah, because then you get to come up with cool adventuring parties, and they're all part of a team, and then your hero shows up and he's just hacking his or her way through them with his with their faithful dog Elmo.
Yeah. This is one of my favorite things to do as a DM, by the way, is come up with over-the-top, ridiculous, opposing adventuring parties. The shining path of justice, or the green dudes from Helm. I love introducing a bunch of stereotypical adventuring schmucks to my other adventuring party, and then they're a pain in the ass.
Right. And when the players are fighting them, they're like, Revengers, form into battle formation, Delta. And you're like, I hate these people.
Adventure
so
team. We can win together.
You guys suck.
It's one of my favorite things in the world. Anyway, I hope this was helpful,
so
Georgina.
Lame.
It sounds fun to me what you're doing, and I love the reverse Indiana Jones idea as a core motivator. So yeah,
and this reminds me that we should, in the not too distant future, do a review of a role-playing game system that really explains how to do a repeated kind of heist or adventure loop for you. I'm thinking Blades in the Dark.
We
could
should have done
pick
Blades in
another
the
one.
Dark ages ago. We should talk about Blades in the Dark because
All right.
it's a really good system and it's a very popular one, and it's one I've stolen from a bunch, so we should talk about it. Well, good luck, Georgina. Let us
good
know
luck.
how it goes, and thank you for writing in.
We should talk about that in the future, but for today, I don't think we have anything more to talk about forever.
We do not. We did all of our bookkeeping at the beginning because we're professionals. So thank you all for listening.
But if you have a letter, right, it's dmofnone@gmail.com.
You can also add us on Twitter at DMofNone. Of course, if you're a Patreon, you can message us there, or you can try to get our attention on the Discord. Any of these might produce an outcome where
good luck. Bon chance.
We are listening. We just have many questions. So thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for writing. Stay healthy, stay safe, and keep rolling them
Arise, you slaves, no more enthrall. The earth shall rise on new foundation. We have been lost, we shall be all.